Welcome back to another episode of the Wasaw PD podcast. I'm Todd Baton. I'm the Deputy Chief here at the Police Department, and I've been looking forward to this episode for a while here now. This was something I'd kind of thought about a little while back, and I'm excited to sit down with retired officer Mark Kurtzhals, retired canine handler, and his canine partner who retired at the same time, Rio. So we're going to have a conversation, learn a little bit more about what does an officer do in retirement, how do they handle that, and really more importantly, how does Rio handle retirement? First of all, thanks for coming in. You're a busy guy. I know you're sitting on your grass yelling at the kids and you're eating hard candy and what. No, I know you're keeping busy in retirement, but I appreciate you coming in, you and Rio. And we'll get to a little bit more about Rio and kind of like what does retirement entail for a retired police canine. But I kind of wanted to set the stage with you a little bit, even pre-retirement, even pre-employment here at the police department, because you did like about 28 years or so here at the police department. What was it about law enforcement? Like, why did you want to get into law enforcement first of all?
Thanks for having me. First of all, I'm honored to you'd want to have a conversation with me, first of all. But, I'm not going to take credit and say that law enforcement was something I wanted to do my whole life. There were other things I was interested in. Maybe surprisingly or not, I was big into tuba, and I went to college and thought that's what I would get into. But my brother, Todd, my oldest sibling, he was in the military, which took him out to Virginia, and he ultimately got a job with the Fairfax County, Virginia Police Department. Big agency. It's a department that borders Washington, D.C. on the Virginia side. And after a while, I said, I'm really not quite sure what I want to do. I'm not sure if this music thing's going to pan out. Hadn't started college yet, so I said, well, what do you think of that police stuff? How's that going for you? He said, well, Mark, I can't wait for the alarm clock to go off every morning because that means I get to get up, get ready, and go to work. And I thought, wow, it doesn't really matter what the job is or how much it pays. Anybody that can get that kind of genuine satisfaction out of work, it's got to be good. So yeah, I thought, well, I'll go to the school. I went to Northern Virginia Technical College. It's our community college. It's the largest community college in the world. There's 65,000 students in their system. Talked to the advisor, and I went through the curriculum, and I saw, looks like there's one math class here. She said, yeah, that's it. I said, wait a second. I can go through this whole program and take one math class? I've always been good at math, but I never really cared for it. So I said, yeah, that works. Sign me up. I'll do it. And then one thing led to another, and came back here where I grew up in Wisconsin.
So yeah, how did you end up at Wasaw PD? Because you're originally from Wisconsin. You were out there for a while, went to school out there. But then, like you said, you ended up back here. And how did you end up at specifically Wausau PD?
So I grew up in Cameron, Rice Lake area. Went to high school in Rice Lake. Moved out to Virginia to go to college and work with my other brother who owned a landscape company. But at that time, back when the two of us started, there were a lot more applicants for this job. It was super competitive. I decided there was too many people in the Washington, D.C. area. I wanted to go back to where I grew up, and I saw in the Wisconsin Law Enforcement Bulletin that Wausau was hiring. So I came here in December of '94 and took the written test, and that was held in a big auditorium room at NTC here in Wausau. I think there was about 160 people in that test time. There was a big snowstorm that morning. About 30 people didn't show up because they didn't want to drive through the snow or couldn't make it through the snow. So at the end of the test, they said, one of the people raised their hand and said, well, how many people do you plan on hiring? And when do you think you'll know the results of this test? They said, well, it's going to be a few days because we actually have 2 more test times later today with this number of applicants. So we're talking about 500 people. And then somebody asked, well, how many people do you plan to hire? And at that time, they weren't allowed to say that they had an opening here unless there was somebody actually gone, not just someone planning to leave. So I said, yeah, we plan to hire 1 person. We all looked at each other like, are you serious? I drove through a snowstorm with 500 other people, and there's 1 opening. I'm not going to get that. Well, Unfortunately, 3 or 4 people retired after that. Openings came up, and I got a phone call, and they came, and the rest is history. I got hired. But I actually got a phone call, and this was a little funny, from Wayne Geiske. He was one of our inspectors at the time. Now they call him captain. This was in February of 1996, 14 months later. First thing he said was, "Mark, you still interested in that job?" And I said, "What job? You mean the one I applied for 14 months ago?" "Yeah. Can you be here Monday?" This was Friday. And I always regretted this comment. It just kind of came off the tip of my tongue where I said, "Do you know what area code you dialed?" "Oh, yeah, you're in Virginia. So how about 2 weeks?" I said, "Yep, okay, I can do it. I'll pack up my stuff and I'll be there in 2 weeks." So then February 19th, I started here.
That's still how we do it, by the way. We just call people usually about 12 or 14 months after. And we say, "Can you be here Monday?" No, we don't do that. Wow, that's it. So it was actually 1996 when you started. Your badge number is 961. Mm-hmm. I started in 2002, and by that time, you had already been here for a handful of years, and you were my field trainer. You were one of my field trainers. I had a few different ones, and like I forget exactly what shift we were on. It was either first or second shift, because we ran 3 shifts back then. Mm-hmm. But so you were really my first introduction to law enforcement in many ways, in showing me like this is how we go out and do the mechanics of the job. This is how you interact with people. This is how we try to be as professional as we can and be respectful and understand. And here's information we need to get. So that was a super formative time in my career. I mean, for anybody, obviously, in field training. But yeah, I'm grateful we had that opportunity together. So then when we were thinking about like, man, it would be really neat to have somebody come on and just kind of talk about, like, reflect on many years of law enforcement service. I'm like, oh, maybe Mark will do it. Like, that'll be kind of cool. So we're kind of back full circle here. I was able to see you at the beginning of my career, and now it's not the end of your career anymore. That was last year, but here we are. So you retired, like, what was your retire date?
May 5th of 24.
Okay, so today's the 13th, I think, right? So just over a year you've been gone, and you're still up and about. You haven't given up the ghost. You're out there, doing whatever retired guys do. But like, let's talk a little bit about your career, because you finished your career as a canine handler, but I wouldn't say you necessarily like became a canine handler like early on in your career. Some people have, some handlers will go through multiple dogs. It was almost I don't know how to, well, how would you describe it? I mean, you had quite a bit of tenure here at the department, and all of a sudden, like, how did you come to that? Did you just decide, you know what, I want some kind of crazy new challenge? Because I don't think that's a small undertaking or commitment to become a canine handler. It's not something where you're like 10 minutes later, you're like, this might not be for me. How did that come about?
So earlier on in my career, I read a series of books that's written by Charles Rensburg. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's basically the life of a police officer and, the different stages. And one of the acronyms he came up with was ROD, retired on duty, kind of a joking statement, but I think it's easy to say that you've put in 20 or 25 years. I've put in my time. I've taken the risks. I've done the job, and I'm going to put it on cruise control and just kind of ease my way out of here. And that's exactly what I did not want to have happen with me. I didn't want people, if my name ever did come up here again, that he was just kind of lazy in his last 5-10 years here, and he didn't really apply himself. He thought he could just ride it out. So I know that you were in my interview when I did the canine interview, and some people said, "Oh, Mark, you got some really big competition there. Do you really think after all this time," because I had been here 20 years at the time, that you're going to be successful? And I said, well, I'm going to try. I need something to kind of keep me going. I was in patrol my entire career, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. I enjoyed that job. But, after a while, it does kind of get to be kind of the same thing over and over. I kind of need something to keep me going. One thing that was very memorable with Rio is at that time when I first started, we just lived at the top of McIntosh Street, and not too far away, but you could tell when we got to be about 3 or 4 blocks away, Rio would stand up, do some circles, whimper a little bit, and you could tell that she was just excited because she knew that we were coming to work. At some point, she was going to get out of the car and get to play her game, which was trying to find the odor of narcotics, and she would get her tennis ball thrown to her, and she was going to have a good time. And I thought, well, if she can be that excited about coming to work, at least I can put on a good face too, and have some excitement for being here. So she really helped me get through the end of my career. Like I said, I had been here for 20 years before I got her, and it was a really nice way to end it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm glad you talked about the process. I don't want to say like I had forgotten about that. I remember that, but forgot a little bit about some of the specifics of it. Like you said, there were really good candidates. I think any of the individuals that had interviewed for that position would have done a really nice job as a canine handler and had a successful career as a canine handler. But I remember one thing that you had said in there. You talked about legacy, kind of like what you're saying now, like, what do I want my legacy to be? And, I've had a good career here and I've been able to do some neat things and I'm ready for this next challenge, which to your point, I mean, not surprising that people would want that, but maybe it's not super common that an individual with 20 years on in a career that's maybe 25, maybe 30 years is going to say, give me some new big task to do, and I would like to kind of reinvent myself or find some new energy. But it sounds like that's definitely what happened. And Rio was a little bit of an anomaly as far as our canines are concerned, because historically we've had the dual purpose dogs, right? And I'll let you explain maybe in a second what that is. And whereas Rio is a single purpose dog when she was a working dog here at the police department. So what was that discussion, or what's the difference? But how did that kind of set Rio apart and make maybe the partnership that you had with Rio a little bit different out in the community as far as community engagement and things like that?
Mm-hmm. As you can tell, Rio is fully retired, so this is mainly what she does all day, so she's good at it.
She looks comfortable.
But so single purpose doesn't necessarily mean that they do one thing. It just means that they use their nose, and that can be for tracking to find maybe a child that wandered off or an elderly person. She used her nose to sniff out narcotics. She's trained in multiple different odors that she's supposed to respond to, and dual purpose means they use their mouth too. They can apprehend suspects and go after the more violent people. Rio wouldn't track someone like that because she would most likely just end up licking their face instead of protecting herself or me. So we never were required to, if someone was to take off running from a vehicle chase or a stolen car or something, that's not Rio's thing. But she was really impressive when I worked with her, and there was a lot of times when we do with training days, and she would run into the room and run straight to the drugs, and then I was pretty proud of that. Not going to say she was the greatest drug dog ever, but she did a good job. She held her own.
So as far as like with that role being just kind of her disposition, she's pretty mellow and friendly and definitely outgoing and would run around here in the building when you guys were here working. It seemed to create a lot of opportunities to connect with community groups, events. I know that you were a frequent visitor at a lot of community functions and things going on. Like you were commonly requested, by the way, by people where you'd be like, well, we'll see if Officer Kurtzhals and Rio are available. Mm-hmm. Usually it was like, can Rio come? And like, if that guy has to come too, sure, we'll take him as well. But yeah, so she was definitely loved in the community.
For sure. The other dogs, the dual purpose dogs, they're one of the mottos of the kennel we get them from is strong social police dogs. So they are social animals, and they can be taken to events, but it almost seemed kind of mysterious how whenever there was a community function or a canine demo, Rio would be the one that would be assigned, because everybody knew that she was going to love everybody there and enjoy the attention. So
yeah,
we
for
did
sure.
go to a lot of different things, the 400 block and YMCA, and I could go on and on with all the different demos we did. And She did a good job.
You're right. I mean, all the dogs really, they do a great job in that outreach capacity, which is really in addition to what their core functions are, but they do a great job with that, and the handlers do as well. But yeah, Rio was kind of in this little bit of a different category where really enjoyed the engagement. But boy, she really looks comfortable right now, or kind of dozing off there. Maybe it's the sound of my voice. No, so that's good stuff. So as I was thinking about this and having you be here, and thought like, okay, man, it was almost 3 decades of law enforcement experience. I'm sure there were a lot of standout incidents or calls or cases that you were part of or investigated. Is there anything that really just kind of rises to the surface of that? And I don't need specifics of things, but like, are there still things where it's like it happened yesterday, and you just remember these things that are burned into your memory, these experiences?
Now that I'm not at the police department, I'm out dealing with people in my new job. Every day my job is to gab with people, but I kind of have to be careful with the stories that I tell, because the average citizen, they'll tell you, thank you for your service. I could never do that job, and hope this doesn't come off the wrong way. But it's really true that the general public really can be shocked by the things that we see on a daily basis. And, we can retire at the age of 53 with a retirement, and some people might say that's too early, but, it's a cumulative effect. I don't think any one particular event really kind of changed me psychologically, but I do have memories that I wish I didn't have. It gets to be to a point where 28 years, it's time to pass the torch to a younger person and let them start out fresh. But really one thing that really kind of changed my outlook on life in general happened before I even came here. I worked part-time as a UW Stout campus police officer in Menominee, and I was also a reserve deputy with the Dunn County Sheriff Department while I went to college. I was pretty busy back then. But once in a while, they would allow the reserve deputies to go with a full-time deputy, and we got sent to a car crash on Highway 29 west of Menominee. It was a Ford Escort against a semi. Fortunately, the person was still alive when we got there. I wasn't handling all the intricacies of everything, but we arrived, there was squad cars, there was fire trucks, lights and sirens, and all of a sudden they must have already called the med helicopter, because there was this helicopter hovering over and landing on the road, and it felt like, wow, it's like I'm in a movie or something. This is crazy. So they said, Mark, I got to go and make sure the scene's secure. Can you just go talk to that guy in the Escort and just keep him calm and let him know the paramedics are on the way? So I did that. Of course, I was 22 years old. I had never been to anything like this before. I thought to myself, what am I going to say to this guy? So I said, the paramedics are on the way. Just try to breathe normally. And at one point I just said, where does it hurt? And he said, well, I have real strong chest pains, but I think I'll be okay. I'm breathing all right. And he was trapped in the car, so I just stood with him for a while. And a little while later, they said, well, we'll take over from here. He rolled his car end over end several times, and in the process, a bunch of tools came flying out. He said, well, why don't you go and clean that up and bring it all back? So I did that, picked up, he worked on a farm, so I picked up a shovel and a rake and some of this other equipment that got thrown out of the car, and one of the things I came upon was a notebook. And I always found it interesting, even though this happened 30 years ago, I always remember this like it was yesterday. It was still open to the page dated that day, and it was a to-do list that he had. So it was that date, and then 10 things on his to-do list. 3 of them were crossed off. And, I picked up the notebook, and I remembered thinking that he didn't get to finish his list, but later on, we got a call from Mayo Hospital in Rochester, where he was taken by helicopter, and said that he broke a rib, which was very sharp, and it cut his aorta going to his heart. There was no way to fix that, and he ended up dying. So then it dawned on me after that, I was thinking back to that notebook, is that he's never going to finish that list. This really can be over right now, today. It's not that he didn't just get to finish his list, and I'm sure dying in a car accident was never on his list when he woke up that morning, but throughout my career, different incidents that I went to, it really drives home the fact that you're not promised anything. Tomorrow may or may not happen. So you have to appreciate things that are going on in your life right now. So when I first heard that you wanted me to come and do an hour-long podcast, did I think to myself, oh, geez, that's the first thing I want to do? No, but hey, you get so many opportunities in life, you might as well take up on it. So yeah. So there's quite a few different things that I could talk about that you probably don't need to hear, but yeah, quite a change in my philosophy over the years.
Well, and I mean, and that's a great perspective. I mean, even from that story early on in your career, how do you think, and you kind of alluded to this already, like how has that shaped you? How has that changed you as a, as a family member, as a spouse, as a parent, as a friend? Like how does that shape one's outlook on life or perspective? Like if someone's coming to you and they're pretty amped up about something that's going south in their life, like, every day I go through this intersection and the light is so long and I have to wait. Are you kind of like, yeah, settle down? Or is it, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. Like what does that teach a person, 30 years of those kinds of experiences?
Mm-hmm. Appreciate what you have and remember when you wanted what you already have, At some point, I decided I wanted to be a canine handler, and I really wanted to have it. I remember when I first moved here, 2 days early. I came from Virginia, drove a couple days through, and I stayed at the what used to be called the Ramada Inn Hotel on the top of 17th Avenue, and a Wausau squad car came over the hill with its lights and sirens flashing. And I'm like, wow, that's going to be me someday. That's pretty cool. So it makes you appreciate what you have and the time that you have here, because it may not be as long as you think it could be.
Yeah, no, this is great. And actually I was going to save this for a little bit later in the conversation, but I think this is a good lead into it. You had sent an email, and I know I had referenced this, I think to your wife or to you maybe in a text, that I'd like to bring this up. You had sent an email on your last day of work last year, and it was sent to the entire department. And essentially it was your list of top 10 things that you had learned while working here at the police department. And I was reviewing it recently, and I pulled it out and made a little copy for myself. And I just wanted to, because some of the things you'd hit on already here. Like, for example, your number 7 was when the opportunity comes, like the promotional opportunity comes around, take a risk and do the interview. And you highlighted that 20 years in, you had this great opportunity to be a canine handler come your way, and that maybe there were some that were like, man, that guy's been on 20 years. Like, he's in the twilight of his career almost. Like, why is he going to be considered to be a front runner for this? And you're like, take a chance, like just go for it. And which is what I'm hearing you say already. But you'd also talked about, well, there's some funny things in here, but be friendly to your coworkers, even if they don't always deserve it, because someday they might just be your supervisor.
Yes.
And I thought, was that a dig at me? No, I didn't think that at all. I'm just kidding. But like, you had some really good practical wisdom that was included here. But the one that I wanted to bring up was kind of ties into what you had talked about with this crash early on in your career, and like the perspective that you can get throughout years and years of this kind of service, which was do your best not to take incidents personally. That was your number 5 on that list. Acknowledging that this job's going to affect you. Those incidents are going to affect you. Seek assistance if you need it. Talk to someone. Take a little bit of time. Relieve the tension. Drive a few blocks if that's what you need to do to just kind of decompress a little bit. And your reason for that last bit was, collect your thoughts, because the next call is coming and people will depend on your leadership at that call. And I don't know that we always remember to do that. Like, no matter how bad the previous call was or how difficult it might be to process, there's always going to be another call. and people are expecting you to come there and bring your best performance and be a resource for them, because that's why they're calling, right? So I remember reading this last year thinking like, man, this is really, really cool stuff. And thinking what a great list, especially for, like, initially I wanted to be like, what a great list for these young officers, but it's not. It's a great list for everybody, really, for all of us. So let me say, like, kind of in that spirit, what advice would you give officers then that are really close to retirement? Or like, what advice do you wish you had received prior to your retiring that maybe you didn't? And you're like, oh man, I wish somebody would have told me that before I retired. Or maybe there's nothing.
Well, one of the main reasons why I wrote that top 10 list is not necessarily, I want to kind of clear the air that I wasn't always great at all of those things. Some of those things were things that I wish I had learned earlier in my career. Some of those are things I wish I had done better. Maybe I would have done even more things if I had. But really what kind of inspired it is when I first started, I learned that the Everest Metro Police Department's philosophy was, well, why do we have these detectives that have all this specialized training, 25 to 30 years of experience, they retire and they take all that with them, and it's really just kind of a waste. It's never to be heard from again, and you just lose all that knowledge and experience. So they would have one of their officers just work with a detective that's about to retire for a month and just get whatever information they could get out of them. I thought that was a really good program. There was a movie with Tom Cruise at one point called The Firm, where he wrote up his manifesto and ended up getting fired over it. But I thought, I can send this on my last day of work, so what can they really do at this point if they don't like what I have to say? But I just think that if I had this list earlier in my career, things would have probably been a lot easier and went smoother. Not that they didn't go smooth, but you look back on what things you could have done better or things that you could have improved upon. So,
yeah, I mean, it was very well received from people that I had talked to about it. But you also include some real practical stuff in there too, even stuff like, hey, financial wellness is really important. So make sure you're doing the best that you can to prepare for retirement, because that day is going to come at some point, and you want to be able to continue to enjoy, your life and be ready to do things. And
that's
so,
one of the things that I didn't do very well. I sometimes bought some things I didn't need to buy.
Well, you had outlined really good principles that are probably sometimes difficult lessons to learn through difficult calls and stuff, but then a lot of real practical good stuff here. So after 30 years nearly, and now being away for a year, I know you've been keeping busy, you're working, you're doing stuff, you're, maybe even busier than you were when you were here. Are there things though about a law enforcement career, about working here, that you miss? And then maybe what don't you miss? What are you like, man, I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, I was fortunate to be one of a few people that have been through a Harley-Davidson motor officer school and training, so I could work on the road on a Harley-Davidson. Every spring, we would lease a couple new Harley-Davidsons, and I didn't have to pay for anything, no gas, no insurance, no payment. And there was many, many occasions where I'd be driving down Grand Avenue thinking to myself, man, they pay me for this. So I was pretty fortunate to have that. It's almost, when you retire, it's like your last day of high school or your graduation day, and you think, okay, that's it? That's all it was? It seemed like it took a long time, but once you get there, you realize, okay, now what am I going to do? Do I just loaf on the couch? And of course, my wife wouldn't allow that to happen. I sat on the couch for 8 days. She said, Mark, you can't lay there the rest of your life. You got to get up and do something. So I'm selling cars now at a car dealership, a Honda dealership.
There you go.
Which I actually really enjoy, because it seems like other people may have a little bit of a difficult time, because everybody that comes through the front door is someone you don't know almost all the time. It's a little awkward. But for me, that's what I did for the last 30 days. My job was to kind of be in a leadership role and answer people's questions and help them through. The same thing now with the car dealership. So I don't have to worry about numbers. I don't have to worry about paperwork. All I have to do is make sure they don't hate me and answer their questions about their car and be knowledgeable. And most of the conversation that we have is not about the car. What about their family, or what do they do, where they live, where they work. And after like an hour or so of just shooting the breeze, I say, so you want to buy this car or not? Well, yeah, of course. So on my last day here, Louis Lopes, a lieutenant, made up a wooden plaque for me, and I thought it was really nice. It was congratulate me on in Rio for our years of service of the canine unit, and picture of me and her, and I was pretty proud of it. I wanted to display it on the desk at my new job, kind of a reminder of where I came from. And some people said, well, do you really want to do that? Just some people out there that don't like police. Maybe it'll cause you a problem for your new job. And I thought to myself, you know what? I think when you're at the police department, you deal with a very small, regular basis, deal with a small percentage of the population. Now I'm at the car dealership. I'm dealing with a larger group of people that do support the police. And so if somebody decides they don't want to buy a car from me because I was a police officer, then so be it. I probably didn't want that customer anyway. But what I've found in the year that I've been there, hundreds of people at my desk, at some point I'll notice them kind of staring off at that picture, and I say, oh, you noticed my picture? I was a police officer in Wausau for 28 years. I just retired last year. That's my dog, Rio. Everybody loves dogs. So we talk about Rio and where she came from. She came from Brazil, and the work that she did. So that has really broken the ice and given me something to talk about, and I'm proud of that plaque that Luis gave me, and hope he watches this at some point and sees that I'm happy that, and we'll always display that plaque on my desk.
Yeah, that's awesome. Talk about maybe what is something that the general public doesn't really know about working with a canine, about sort of that dynamic. What's the maybe one of the best parts of having a canine partner, or what, again, maybe what's a little known thing about that?
Surprisingly, people don't know all the time that the dog is with you 24/7, and basically that means your job is with you 24/7. And in Rio's case, she's a part of the family, and it's not a problem. But they're specially trained, and she's not biting anybody for the most part. Though the dual-purpose dogs, you can't just leave them with anybody; you have to leave them with another handler. But yeah, I spent a lot more time with her than I did with the rest of my family while we worked together. People usually always ask too, when you're done at the police department, do you get to keep the dog? And I still have that same question being asked of me now. I would hope I could explain that since I spent so much time, and all the other handlers do too, the last thing on our mind would ever be to give this dog up. And fortunately, when I retired, I was given a letter transferring ownership to me, so Rio's my pet now. She had her dog food and vet bills paid by the police department for a long time, and now I get to take that over, but she's thankfully pretty healthy. So, the dogs do stick with us when we retire, and basically the same thing as before. It's just she doesn't have to spend so much time in the back of the squad car anymore.
So you and Rio worked 8 years together, right? 8-ish years on the road. How often did Rio outshine Officer Kurtzhals when you showed up in public?
Well, all the time they would say, "Oh, she's so beautiful." They never told me I was handsome or anything, but she was always the beautiful one. So,
well, she was great. She did a great job. So, if you look back to 1996 and compare it to today, someone coming into law enforcement right now. I mean, you even talked about the number of applicants back when you were hired. In the hundreds. We get maybe a tenth of that nowadays when we run a recruitment. What advice might you give a young person, let's say one of your kids decided, I think I want to get into law enforcement, or somebody that and is just asking your advice as a retired law enforcement officer? What would you say to somebody about wanting to get into law enforcement today? Maybe about the change throughout the years, or kind of how it's evolved, or how to prepare for that, or whatever.
The time really kind of blew by for me, and it doesn't seem like that really should have evolved the way it did. But honestly, when I first started, the only thing I had in my squad car with me up front was a radar and a 12-gauge shotgun. That was it. Towards the end, I had a computer. I had 2 different cameras. I had 2 different GPS units going to 2 different places. I had an AR-15 rifle, taser, all sorts of newfangled equipment, and I always had to make sure the batteries were charged so they wouldn't go dead on me. Didn't have to worry about that in the beginning. Didn't even have a cell phone in the squad car at that time. So it is pretty amazing how things have evolved. And changed. My son recently said, "Oh, that police work, that does sound pretty interesting," and I kind of have to pause because I have all the real life experiences, and it's a good job, but you have to realize that, first of all, don't believe everything you read on Facebook or videos you see on Instagram or TikTok. Police officers a lot of times have to keep things confidential. That's one of the attributes of an officer, is keeping confidentiality, and so that also means that they're not able to really defend themselves. It gives people free rein that have had run-ins or bad experiences, because there's a few bad apples. I'd say for the most part, almost all police officers are there to help people and do good things. But then it's easy to focus on the few negative experiences. So stay away from that, and just know that while it may seem difficult to you because people are allowed to say things that aren't necessarily true and you can't really defend yourself, but you are dealing mostly with repeat customers, and customers as in citizens, and there are many more people out there that support law enforcement than don't. And I see that every day in my new job. People all the time tell me, thank you for your service. We couldn't be as safe as we are without the people doing that job. So know that you're doing a good thing, and you'll have memories like I do. I've focused on some of the negative things, but there's a lot of positive things. I've helped a lot of people, and gotten some letters years later saying that their life turned around after an incident that I was involved with, and things are better now because of it. And so you'll have a lot of positive experiences too, and don't let people allow you to believe that they're against you, because most people are not.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, like what you had just said at the end here. What do you look back on and think, I'm really proud of that, or that really shaped who I am, or I'm very grateful for these experiences? And one you had kind of talked about, like, you get to sometimes see the people that maybe you helped affect a change in early on. Like, oh, I used to chase that guy around when they were a teenager, and like now you see them and they're like, I remember you from back in the day, and you're like, how you doing? I'm doing great. I work here. I got a family. I got kids. I'm success. And it just kind of got out of their system, and people, because people make mistakes, and sometimes it's early on in life. And is there anything, like, as you look back and reflect on that long career, a long successful career, and say, yeah, I'm grateful for a lot of things, but I'm really grateful for this. Like, I'm glad I had whatever experience.
I would say it was the chance to be a field training officer. And you mentioned that you and I worked together for a while, but I did it for about 14 years. And you get asked the same questions over and over again, but all that means is that if you don't know the answer, you just get embarrassed more often than not. So it makes you a better officer, because you want to make sure the next time you're asked that question that you're going to have the correct answer. I always told people, I'm not going to answer a question if I don't know the answer. If I don't know it, I'll go figure out what it is. But at one point here at the police department, more than half of the officers working the road were trained by me. When I would go on calls with them, I'd see them saying things to people that I told them to say. I'd see them writing narratives on their citations exactly how I wrote it prior to them writing with me. It was quite a feeling of pride that I was trusted to train the people to deal with the community by the management staff here. They had trust in me. And sometimes, I'll be honest, it was a little frustrating, because if I made a mistake, the first thing they would say is, Mark, you're an FTO. I'd expect more out of you. Yeah, okay, sorry. I'll try to do better next time. But I think all officers should be a field training officer at some point in their career, even if it's only for like a year or two, because it's really interesting to get the perspective of, any officer is in a leadership role, whether they know it or not. But even though you don't have a lieutenant bar on or sergeant stripes on your arm, you're still that person's supervisor for a while. They ride with you, and you're expected to do things the right way and have a good attitude and help them get their career off to a start. So as far as what I'm most proud of, I would say that there's a lot of different things that I can reflect on, and memories that I have of training people here, a lot of people that are still here working and doing things the way that I train them how to do them as.
I think what's really great about that, and that might be a good place to kind of wrap up here, is I don't think it's possible to really overstate the far-reaching impact that your 28, nearly 30 years of service here is going to have. I mean, 30 years, 28 years, like that's long enough on its own. But just what you had said, you've trained all these officers. Many of them still work here. Most of them were field trainers as well, using those things, those tools that they were equipped with by you. They have now equipped a younger generation of officers who in turn will be training newer officers still. And so there will always be sort of this element of Officer Kurtzhals here, the Officer Kurtzhals way in many respects on how to effectively do this job and serve the community for so many years, to have a long career, a successful career, and an effective career in providing the service I think that Wausau's just come to expect from its police department. So I'm super thankful for, all the time that you were here, the time that we were able to work together. Really grateful that you were able to come and share some of those thoughts and reflections, and that you're doing well in retirement. We'll welcome you back here. We're actually, in the middle of a process right now. So if you want to come back, I'm just kidding.
Well, I think Rio's about done.
Yeah, and it was great to see Rio.
Sorry she was so loungy the whole time.
She's a little comatose, right? Oh, no, she's moving around.
Yeah,
but,
she put in her time, I guess.
So thanks for coming. We really appreciate you being here today. In closing then, let me just ask you, as kind of the old timer that is retired last year, what is some fatherly kind of dad advice that you would have for anybody really watching this that might be interested in a law enforcement career, or just kind of life advice in general?
Things are going to change, whether you like it or not. Things are going to evolve. You're going to get new technology, new computer software, new all sorts of things. And just remember that the lieutenants sometimes are a messenger from up above, like from you, passing things on. Maybe they want to change things, maybe they don't want to, but they have to, and you're going to have an opinion. And this is where one of my downfalls, where sometimes I let my opinion come out my lips when I shouldn't have. So you can have your opinion, it's okay, but maybe keep it to yourself, because not everybody wants to hear that opinion. Go about your business and do what you're asked to do, and everything will be fine. And maybe once in a while you can give your opinion, just maybe don't express it so much.
I like it. So a message of optimism and perspective. I think that's good advice for all of us. Thanks for watching this episode of the Wasaw PD podcast. We hope that you found this interesting. Great conversation that we had today with Officer Mark Kurtzhals, retired, and canine partner Rio, also retired, and hanging out and looking very comfortable on the floor here. We hope that you'll tune in next time for upcoming episodes of the podcast.